Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Full 40 with Chris, Trevor, and yours truly, Willie. Today we're just gonna start fucking yelling. Let's just get after it. The bracket was just released. Like, let's fucking get after this shit. The Big East versus everybody. Ether. You guys are getting a very unfiltered version of me right now. I might be yelling. We were fucking hosed. There's a fucking crock of shit going on. I'm Chris.
Trevor. We being the Big East, not
we being
Villanova.
The Big East, yeah, not Villanova.
No, Villanova wasn't hosed by the NCAA committee.
I just want to clarify.
Or anybody else. Villanova was hosed by a lot of things that we'll get into.
We've been hosing ourselves, is what I would say. But that's not Villanova's later. This is about the Big East.
Guys, I don't know about you, but I haven't drank on one of these podcasts in a long time, and I've got options in front of me here. I've got a Guinness, like a Villanova Guinness, actually. That's not bad, right? Like, look at that little map of the area. I've got like this old school Big East cup with another beer in it, right? Look at this. It says Big East basketball on the back of it. That's kind of sweet. And then I got Bailey's because I'm fucking celebrating St. Patrick's Day here. So. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot to talk about. I think we got to start with the NCAA tournament. We're going to get the NIT soon. We learned that St. John's doesn't want to participate in that. But it's the NCAA tournament, and only 3 Big East teams are participating. It's been a fucking hectic week with bid stealers, whatever. The craziest that I can remember.
Without a doubt.
But nevertheless, I don't care what the excuse is. Only 3 Big East teams made the field, and all 3 of them are top 3 seeds. Make it make sense.
None of this makes any damn sense to me. None of this makes any goddamn sense to me. I'm between St. John's and Seton Hall as the biggest omissions. Everything they did in this bracket was just wrong. Like, starting from Duquesne being an 11 seed, which didn't make any goddamn sense to me. Like, they basically, the A10, they said, oh, the A10 is going to be Dayton. We'll give them the AQ. And then when that didn't happen, they're like, oh, it's going to be VCU. We're going to lock in a VCU at 11. Duquesne was like a 13 or 14 seed. It was just a mess. None of their principles were the same. And all of this just like culminates in kind of a bunch of horseshit for us.
They fucked up. They fucked up this bracket as bad as I've seen any bracket get fucked up. Like, even down to like little shit. Like, for example, Creighton is playing Akron in Pittsburgh, which is like hours, not even hours, maybe a couple hours away from Pittsburgh. Like, Akron's like pretty close to Cleveland, right? Like, obviously it's where LeBron's from, but like
hour 50
from Pittsburgh, and Creighton's flying in to play an away game in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 3-14. Should they win that game? Yeah, of course. But like, what the fuck is that? And then secondly, Spokane, Washington. This is another crazy shit. Spokane, Washington is hosting 5 seed St. Mary's and 4 seed Alabama. So, assuming that the favorites win those games, St. Mary's is going to play a home game versus the 4 seed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like crazy shit that I've never seen before has happened. And you know what? I had a reply to I think it was Dave Warlock. And I said, like, how have you changed the bracket basically, or changed the process to allow these conference tournament games to matter? And he basically said every game matters. And I was like, okay, whatever. Thanks for your contribution. But like, I was just like, clearly it didn't. Right?
It doesn't. Yeah. The conference tournaments do not matter. If you do not win your conference tournament, it doesn't matter.
They don't. And they don't reseed anything based on what happens in the actual games at the last thing.
It's insane. Like, I understand getting a principle of like your first 30, your 36 at-large teams. But like, when they said like, oh, we had 35 out of 36 locked before the tournament. So then what the fuck are we doing this for? Like, just what are we doing this for?
Before Saturday, Saturday morning, they're like, 35 of the 36 are locked in.
even if you have them locked in, don't tell us. Like,
yeah, that's crazy from like a process standpoint that they would be that revelatory. But like, what I mean, I get, like, to Willie's point. Yeah, by the time Saturday rolls around, you probably have enough information to do 30. But like they say on the team sheet, there's Ken Pom and Net and whatever. And like we looked at all these details last week. Well, if you're not going to update it for like the last game of the season at the last time and say this is it. And by the way, as Villanova fans, we unfortunately know how fast something can move with one game because our Net played us straight out of any conversation to begin with, which in a weird retrospect, it was kind of like us because we were nowhere fucking close after we won by 1 versus DePaul. But just absolute insanity all the way around. I feel for Seton Hall, St. John's, and Providence. I like the look. St. John's, my parents went there, so I have an affinity for that school that goes a little bit family wise. But like Seton Hall and Providence to me were the ones that got effed up the most because a lot of what St. John's resume was pinned on was Villanova and
which isn't good.
Which it wasn't good. Right. Exactly right. Whereas Providence and Seton Hall had actually beaten Creighton, Marquette, UConn, whatever, like respectively, beaten Wisconsin, what have you. So those teams actually had like real wins significantly versus the field.
Yep.
Whereas St. John's didn't to the same degree. St. John's did beat Creighton, but like they didn't have the same level of wins as those teams did. They had better metrics, but they didn't have the same level of wins.
Am I allowed to dance on St. John's grave a little bit? It's just nice to be right about one. As we know at the Full 40, Brian is right about everything, and it just feels really nice for me to be able to say preseason that I didn't think St. John's was going to do anything special, and they missed out, probably got hosed, but I was right. So that's all I wanted to say.
It's a fucking embarrassment. Like,
it's humiliating for the conference. We talk all year about how this is the best conference in college basketball, and just awful.
Well, and this needs to be said. We need to get into this dialogue too. Like the NCAA committee does what they're going to do, and they're held accountable by conference commissioners, college administrators, etc. And candidly, and we've complained about this all year. We've done it on Spaces. We've like other team Spaces. We've done it on our Twitter account. We've done it on this podcast for months and have been beating the drum of no one is championing this league. Fox, as a media partner, has done absolute dog shit. We talked about how they let ESPN walk in the door and do College Game Day at UConn because they don't do anything. Nothing. The Fox does fucking nothing for this league. Absolutely nothing. And sorry, Willie, I'll give you 1 second.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
They do absolutely nothing for this league. They don't like, they even throw Mike DeCourcy, who has no personality whatsoever. He doesn't have like a personality like Lunardi or even like the bad haircut and bad dressing style of Jerry Palm. He doesn't fucking do dog shit for this league. And they throw like, here's Mike DeCourcy's like 100th most accurate bracket. And it's just like, it's just garbage stuff. And in addition to that, at least with Lunardi, I know that he's pushing to some degree ESPN conferences. I know that he's pushing ACC, whatever. And I'm not saying here like Lunardi is the most accurate or best bracketologist. He's not. But like he doesn't like candidly he's just an ESPN shill. But like I appreciate that about him to a certain weird degree because no one shills for us. No, absolutely nobody shills for us. Where's Val Ackerman in interviews with the media over the course of the last couple of weeks? Meanwhile, Swabrick or whatever the fuck their names are, Yormark, is talking on media interviews about how we need to expand the tournament or whatever, basically threatening the shit out of the NCAA if their teams don't get in the field. And Val Ackerman's twiddling her fucking thumbs being like, yeah, we trust the process. We trust these guys. Oh, for what? For what fucking reason do you trust these guys? The Big East has won 3 of the last 7 national championships. Has been Yeah.
And that's what I want to get to. Like,
Yeah.
just like, sorry to cut you off, but like, the only people that have been championing the Big East are the fans, which we know we have the fucking most passionate fans of a conference in college basketball. Probably, like, I'll give SEC football like its own thing, but like, it's Big East and SEC football when it comes to passionate, knowledgeable, and like fans who care about. And then obviously the product on the court. Villanova did it for the better part of a decade, being the best product on the court. Now we have Connecticut, we have Marquette, we have Creighton, who I have said Creighton sucks all year. I'm anti that. Creighton's fucking awesome. Fuck you, everybody. I'm really fired up about this. I've never been so fucking fired up. No one is stepping up for the Big East. Fox isn't, Val isn't. It's the players, it's the fans, and it's to some extent, depending on the coach that you have, the coaches. Like what Kim English did was fucking awesome today, because that's what needs to be done. Like across the board, this is an embarrassment. Yeah.
Someone did point this out. They said Fox gives us Fanta. Fanta is the #1 champion in the world for this league. Right. Period. And he's the only media member who really goes out of his way to champion the conference. So that John actually goes without saying, because he's managed to make an objective space for himself in the broader national college basketball media coverage sphere while also championing the biggest. So like Fanta gets a pass from everything, but that is like, it's absolutely outrageous. We can't trust the league to do some bidding for us. I mean, like you go back 15 years and the way that the conference media partner Fox handled some of the biggest games of the season, UConn, Marquette, whatever, how they handled it. And people would get fired for like how bad they've botched it. Now it's like celebrated, like, oh, look at us, which is so great. All our games are on national television. No one ever heard that it was happening, but they're on national TV. And so I am absolutely outraged by what's transpired here. I to some degree, I feel like it's richly deserved. I feel like the conference office has earned what happened to them and to us. And that's a shame, because it hurts the fans. The people who lose are the fans. The people who lose are and most specifically the teams that play. Like the Big East Player of the Year doesn't get to play in the NCAA tournament. I know UConn fans are like, well, Tristan Newton was the player, but whatever. Like the actual voted upon by coaches Player of the Year, Devin Carter, doesn't get to play in the NCAA tournament, despite the fact that they had a great showing at MSG this week. I'm so livid. I'm livid on behalf of the players and the fans, and I'm livid at the conference office. And there's a lot of people on Twitter right now saying fire Val Ackerman. I think there's a lot of us who feel like, when she brought UConn back to the conference and when she re-upped the media rights deal a few years back, and when she re-upped the MSG deal a few years back, not this most recent re-uppage, but a few years back, like right before COVID or something like that. I feel like there's a lot of people who felt pretty good about her leadership. So I'll pause on saying all the way there, but she has to wear this. This is on her. This is on her office.
There's no creativity. Back in 2013, when everything happened, there was everybody got together, the presidents, all the people, the commissioners, whoever came together, and there was creativity to create the Catholic Seven. There was creativity to then reach out and pull everything out. There was people kind of being creative and thinking about how we can push this league forward. Since then, it has genuinely stopped being creative, and it's just been, we're just going to let our product speak. And the product spoke. Villanova did great. UConn's been great. But it's very clear that college basketball and just college athletics is changing, and we are not keeping up with that, and we're staying insulated. And I'm not saying go pull other teams, go pull St. Louis. That's not even the conversation I'm having. The conversation I'm having is the desire and the innovation to kind of find creative ways to continue to push the Big East to the top of the conferences. ESPN, once again, College Game Day is College Game Day. Like you're not going to be able to replicate that, but like there are other networks that have big days around these important games. The fact like that UConn and Marquette, both times they played, if I remember correctly, they were both top 5, or maybe not top 5, or definitely both top 10 games, and there was just no fanfare around it. Like all of this is to say, there's no vision from Val or vision from anybody in the offices that that looks ahead at the Big East and says, this is where we're going to go, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is the way that we're going to be creative, innovative, and continue to push what we believe, what everyone who's listening to this believes is like the best college basketball product in the country, push that to the forefront. And now we're not going to get it. And to your point, I was going to call this out, Chris, like we're not going to get to see Devin Carter play. And obviously, like once literally exactly what you said. And I made a joke about this in our text chat like earlier this week of like, oh, the Big East player of the year is probably not going to be able to play in the tournament. But this is like an outrage. Like the fact that there's only the 3 teams, I could keep going. And it's not like, I think there's a lot of people who are like, fuck the Mountain West. It's not the Mountain West fault. It's everything else in between. It's the SEC teams that got overseeded. It's Michigan State still somehow making it. It's FAU being in the tournament. Honestly, probably at all. Like, I'm sorry. And then once again, it does not matter. Like, just the idea that, and I think this is the thing I'm going to keep going with. Just the idea that it does not, like, if they have seeded everything before the conference tournaments, why the fuck does this matter? Like, if it's only for auto bids, then why? Like, it just, if I'm a high seed team, like, fuck it. I know I'm in the tournament. Fuck off. Like, it's only for auto bids. It doesn't matter. It's a binary system of like a 0 or a 1 of like, you need to win the conference tournament for it to matter. And when it shouldn't, when to get to the finals or to get to the semifinals, you have to beat good teams. That should be added onto your record. That should be considered and thought about. And it's not, and it's horseshit. And not just for the Big East, but for every team that's gone through this.
Yeah, I'm so disgusted. I'm so disgusted right now. I mean, the NCAA committee deserves a heaping share of
They
crap
just
laying
don't
up.
know what
And
they're
they've been
doing.
getting it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you read Twitter, I mean, like everybody, every bracketologist, every media member is like, what the fuck did they do? And you know, I feel like I have to say it, like the guys on CBS, I mean, Jay included, like as the kind of like, they're probably tied because it's like absolutely like a scripted show, like front to back. And the reactions are all scripted and they know everything that they're going to say. They have the bracket before it goes out. And I don't care if you tell me that they don't, they do. So like they kind of have a sense of what they're going to say, because this is all just like media mishmash put together by the NCAA. It's not like actual real reactions, but now that that's over, everyone's reacting to it and everyone's like widely panning the NCAA, which at the end of the day, like, you know, it tends to happen a lot of years, but it'll go in one year out the other and everyone will just move on, because at the end of the day, NCAA tournament's fun, but it sucks. It sucks because the players, right? Like, and I said the fans, and I probably should have, we speak on behalf of the fans here at the Full 40. So like, that's why we focus that first, but like, really it sucks for the players. They get a handful of cracks at this. Devin Carter is probably going to go to the NBA, right? Like he had another chance to play in the NCAA tournament. Last year, his coach walked out the door on him. This year, and they played a 6-11 game versus Kentucky. Like this year they get left out of the field despite having 6 quad one wins, and they get left out of the fucking field. It's just a disgrace. They have bastardized this thing, and it's all just because they're going to let the complaints roll in, and then they're going to say, well, I guess we need to expand the tournament now. And it's like, and it's just shameful.
It's just going to be another reason to add 2 other Big 12 and SEC teams into it.
We're going to be in the same exact position.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's disgusting. So, I mean, look, we have to focus a little bit on Villanova, and we have a lot to get right in our house here. So, like, I think unless you guys want to say who your national champion is, I mean, I'm telling you right now, I'm picking UConn all the way. I have no reason to bet against UConn in this tournament. Houston is my number 1 team that I think could potentially take them. But the chances of a UConn Houston championship game are pretty slim and none, but I feel better about UConn making it all the way through than I do Houston. But that's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah. One, just as an aside, everyone listening, we will have like a full 40 Nova Insider Network, just like open bracket for anyone to just put something in, have just bragging rights. There's no prize, but we'll put that out there, and that'll be probably after this episode. That'll be out there. I did my first bracket already, and I went UConn, Marquette, Alabama, and then I went with some craziness and I went Colorado State because I love my Mountain West State babies. But I like I've never had. I don't. This is like where I think I realized how upset I was about today. Was like I've never had the like. Usually, the second the bracket is released, usually by now I have made 7 brackets of just like I love the madness of it. I love like the creativity. I'll go through do one where I'm picking best offenses, best defenses. I'm picking like NBA players. I'm picking coaching advantages. I'm using algebracket to create like an algebraic formula to think about like what's important and then use that to see like I'm doing all this stuff. And this year I was kind of like, I'm just kind of fucking pissed off right now. I don't want to make a bracket. Obviously, I'm going to make fucking 40 because I'm sicko. But overall, like, yeah, UConn's probably the like just like they're a wagon. I think Auburn is good, but I don't like UConn Auburn. I'm going to take UConn. Auburn might be able to give them a little bit of a push. I think Illinois sucks. That's my new one. So if Creighton doesn't suck, Illinois, fuck you. Yeah, so that's probably going to be a big one that I had. I wanted to pick Kentucky, but I just don't like the bracket. I don't like how it breaks. Like having to go through Marquette and Houston, I just don't like that for them. Yeah, but we can focus on the shitty house on the main line.
Yeah, I just wanted to, for whatever reason this year, like having done some of the bracket and the bubble analysis, and with some of the and in adding to that the chaos that happened this week, I am pretty confident that 1 through 3 to 4, probably 1 through 3, 4, 3.5 lines. I'm not picking any upsets early. There might be some. But like broadly speaking,
I'm slamming
I feel
Kansas.
Yeah, well, they're on the other side of the 3.
Oh, you mean that? That's what you're saying. Yeah.
But I'm probably not picking too many upsets early because I think college basketball is very top heavy this season. Just my feel on things. But from like 4,
the Big East is at least.
Yeah, halfway through the 4 line through like 8 seeds, chaos, absolute mayhem. Because I don't trust any of those teams. Like Clemson is a perfect example of a team where like they're a 6, right? Like yeah. I don't have any confidence in them at all.
I will pick New Mexico. New Mexico is really fucking good.
Yeah, they're fun.
Mexico in every single game.
Yeah, but there wasn't a whole lot of breathing room between Clemson. At the end of the day, there wasn't a ton of breathing room between Clemson's resume and New Mexico's resume when you come down to it. So yeah, I mean,
something else that bothered me, and like I may have missed this, but it sounded like more or less with the Mountain West, they felt that it didn't like because the only wins that they had were versus the Mountain West. Like a lot of those teams, like their most important wins, it like watered it down. But then you look at just like
why are 6 teams in the field?
Yeah. Why are 6 teams in the field? But then also just like every other team that just only beat people within their conference, like Clemson or like I don't know. I'm just like whatever.
Yeah. I'll make one final point because it goes to our conversation after the break. The NCAA, like I looked at the last 8 to 10 seeds that are major conferences. So excluding the Mountain West, excluding FAU. I looked at the 8 to 10 seeds from major conferences, and to their credit, A&M and Michigan State played very hard schedules. Other than that, I mean, in totality, hard non-conference schedules. Other than that, like these teams played garbage non-conference schedules. And so if that's the message that you want to send, committee, noted, right? Like noted, you don't have to schedule that hard. All the stuff that you've previously said about how we looked at that mattered, whatever. Like Northwestern had like 330, right? Like, and not to say Northwestern didn't deserve it, so to speak, but like TCU 328, Nebraska 301, Colorado 262, Mississippi State 234, Virginia 161 is not bad, but like okay, like the average of all the 8 to 10 major conference seeds schedule non-conference strength of schedule wise 210, median 248. The message that you said in there is just stack up wins. Doesn't matter who the fuck you play, stack up wins. So really, really great, really good.
All right. I think we get into an ad read, and then we talk about our own house.
Yes, let's do that.
Trevor, it's going to be you.
Today's episode of the Full 40 is brought to you by Homefield Apparel. Homefield produces some of the best quality vintage collegiate apparel on the market. You won't find better game day gear anywhere else. Homefield has the ultimate collection of old school logos and looks with the best quality around. Shop t-shirts, crew necks, hoodies, bomber jackets, and more at homefieldapparel.com. Don't forget to use code NOVAINSIDER for 15% off your first purchase. That's code NOVAINSIDER at homefieldapparel.com.
So now we talk about Villanova.
Do you think Providence did not make it to the tournament because they lost to Villanova twice?
Yeah, I mean, those have to be bad losses at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
You almost lost to a team. You lost to a team twice that almost lost to DePaul.
Yeah.
It felt like we lost to DePaul. Might as well fucking lost to DePaul.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Trevor.
So I think I kind of know where we all stand individually, but just to, I guess, get the conversation going, I think it is three or 4 weeks ago, I would have put my life savings on no major move happening to any of our coaches. I don't think Neptune is gone. I think he gets one more year, but I think the discourse and everything surrounding it is a lot. There's so much more pressure on Father Peter and Mark Jackson now than there was before the Creighton game. The way that this roster didn't live up to what we and actual experts, and what everybody thought would be a surefire tournament team. You have to ask hard questions now.
It's time for bed.
No, it's not.
It's not time for bed. It's time to talk about Kyle Neptune.
It might be time for bed for somebody.
Might be time for bed.
I should probably sleep.
But I think, say whatever we want about the team's actual performance versus what it looked like on paper coming in. Like, we were all thrilled with the players we acquired in the offseason and the roster we had coming back and where that team could go in theory. Obviously, it didn't happen anywhere remotely close to what we expected. So where do you stand? I know where you guys stand, but let's talk about it for everybody else.
Yeah. So
Chris, can I go before you go on?
Yeah,
yours?
go ahead.
Because I know yours is going to be much longer.
Go ahead.
We're on the same page here. I don't think there's what I want to happen and what I think will happen.
Agreed.
What I want to happen is we need to make a move, and I'll outline why I believe we need to make a move. What I believe will happen is Neptune will get another year. This is where they intertwine, where I think like what needs to happen is Neptune should be let go, but he won't be. And this is where I worry about it. Next year, as of right now, the cupboard looks pretty bare. It's TJ Bamba. It is Hausen, Armstrong. We're not even taking into account transfer, maybe people transferring out. Hausen, Armstrong, Trey Patterson, if he's playing basketball, Nana Njoku, Jordan Longino, who's overcoming or did something, a meniscus tear, whatever it is, like will be.
Oh, we still don't know.
We still don't know, but behind
officially we don't know.
Yeah. He will likely be behind the 8 ball going into the offseason. Lance Ware. That's about it. And then, am I missing it now?
We have
and then
Matt Hodge coming in,
yeah,
and Josiah Mosley and Jordan Dumont coming off a red shirt. And do we have another?
Malcolm Thomas.
Thomas.
So we have all those coming in.
So we have a bunch of power forwards.
Still no point guard. Still no point guard.
Still no point guard.
We have a bunch of power forwards.
And Lance Ware, no big man.
Yeah.
And so as of now, like things will change. There'll be things that happen in the portal. I don't know how you can look at what we've done thus far and say next year's team is going to be better. I think if you look at just on paper without even knowing, we don't know what the transfers are that are going to be like, sure. And I'll get to something with that. But we can't look at say next year's team is going to be better. So I expect next year to be a worse season. And this time, Kyle will have a legitimate reason for next year to be a worse season. We're going to be depending on, to some extent, depending on 3 freshman forwards, 4 if you add Dumont. So we're depending on youth there, and it's going to be a little bit of a step back. And then we're going to go into the next year, and if there's no growth, then it's going to happen again. Basically, what I'm getting at is if we don't act now, Kyle will have be given the runway for another 2 to 3 seasons of this, and we're not going to be able to like. It's going to get worse. And the reason I believe it's going to get worse is sit here right now, based on basketball merits only, not what Villanova's done historically, not about, oh, but this is the pattern. On basketball merits, what has Kyle Neptune done in the last 2 years that makes you think, yes, this is the answer? A lot of people will say nothing, but they will say like, but he deserves the chance. And my question to all this is, why does he deserve the chance? Because he was thrown a job that, frankly, he probably didn't even ask for. And then 2, like, why does he deserve the chance? Like, he hasn't shown anything historically to get us to say that he has the ability to do this. Or a player improvement year over year hasn't really gotten that much better. And it's a small sample size. Like, he has 2 years. But, like, we didn't see a huge leap from Haas. We didn't see a huge leap for Armstrong. We haven't seen, like, Longino make a huge leap. All right, sure, you can, like, write your own
regressions.
You saw regression there.
On shooting percentages, to name
exactly.
one thing.
Yeah.
You can write your own reasons about that. But then we brought in 3 highly touted transfers, all of whom were markedly worse than they were like in their previous schools. And like, there's a level of like, yeah, you take 3 players that were stars or at their other school, you put them all on one team. Like, people have to drop into role allocations, but none of them played even up to like, I think maybe Bamba, but like none of them played up to like expectations. Let's just broad stroke it like that. We know there's nuance in everything. All this to say, what has Kyle done on court that makes you believe that he deserves more time? And if he does not deserve more time, the question is then why aren't we acting now? And if it's because Villanova hasn't historically done that, fuck that. That's not how this should be run. That's just because you haven't historically done something doesn't mean it can't change. And that's the conversation that needs to be had. I'll shut up, Chris, and I'll let you start rolling.
Yeah. So I have to start off with a couple of key things that I have to raise. One, this is not a personal discussion. I've met Kyle Neptune briefly, and he was very gracious, nice guy, right? And everything that I've ever heard about him, and the way that the former players come on Twitter and elsewhere and defend him is telling about what they believe about the guy, right? So like, and from a personal standpoint, right? Forget the basketball stuff. So this is not personal. I hate to say that, but like, I feel like it needs to get out of the way. And so I'm going to do my best.
It's insane that we even have to say that.
Right. But we know the atmosphere that Villanova operates in. It's a small world. And if you're listening and you're not a Villanova fan, Villanova is smaller than you can possibly imagine. And in addition to that, I also have Father Peter said my wedding, right? Like I don't think I've said that live on the podcast before, but like
you have.
Okay, thank you. But like, I'm a very big believer in Father Peter. I know the man very personally. I trust his leadership. I trust his judgment implicitly. So like, I just need to say that. I don't know Mark Jackson from a hole in the wall, but like, this is difficult for me, and it's not what I want to have to say. Because the reality of the situation is that I wish I didn't have to say it, but unfortunately, I can't reach a conclusion other than, and Willie, I agree with you. He's not going to get let go, but I can't reach a conclusion personally as I watch this and I look at this program to say anything other than he should be let go. We should move on, and we should move on, and we should move on with vim and vigor as we enter this March season. DePaul has already made a hire. Chris Holtman is the new head coach at DePaul. Dan Hurley is arguably the best coach in the country right now. Shaka Smart is an excellent coach who's been to Final Fours. Rick Pitino is Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
And Shaheen Holloway's been to an Elite Eight. Sean Miller's been to Elite Eights and Sweet 16s. Ed Cooley's been to a Sweet 16. Kim English is probably right there with Kyle in terms of least provenness of it. And you look around, Todd Mata has been to Final Fours. You look around at the coaching situation in the conference, and for Villanova, the program of this stature, to have not only a non-accomplished coach, but candidly, like just a coach who's learning on the job, is not fair to him. And it's not fair to the Villanova program and what we stand for and the expectations that we built for ourselves. Now, I got to be clear about something. I personally, I think you hear a lot of people are saying, well, we're Final Fours and national championships and whatever. That's not my expectation personally. I don't have that expectation. I think it's important to level set what the expectations really are. The expectations are clearly not make NITs left and right. The expectations are above that. We fancy ourselves. I mean, Villanova fans like to have the blue blood talk from a couple of years ago, but we fancy ourselves like a top 20, 10 program in the country. Like you have to act like it, like to a certain degree. Like, yes, you want to do your own thing, but you have to act like this. So like and my point in saying all of that is like a preamble is that you can't be in a situation where as a bubble, you can be in a bubble every so often, but you can't be in a situation where, as we sit here today, do you have any faith that Kyle Neptune is going to be a coach that is going to, if you give him 3 years, right? Give him 3 more years, right? Do you have any faith that he's going to be a coach that is going to make Sweet 16s with some level of regularity, right? Like in terms of like what your minimum expectations for the program are, if you're a top 10, 15, 20 program, whatever you want to call it in the country, if you think that you're a top 10, 15, 20 job in the country, are you going to make Sweet 16s 3 every 5 years, 2 every 5 years? You can make the tournament 4 every 5 years, right? Like you start like putting together that thought process as to like, where can a coach get to from a ceiling perspective? Will Kyle Neptune improve with time? Yeah, because like if I start carpentry, if I start carpentry tomorrow, I don't know how to. I mean, I can hammer a nail, but like if I don't know how to fucking build a house. But yeah, after a long period of time, if I learned carpentry, I could probably fucking build a house, right? Like at some point in time.
And that gets to the question of like, how does Villanova view itself? Because if we think we're a program that someone can come and cut their teeth on and just slowly improve over time, I think that should be communicated to the fan base at large.
Right.
So we can act accordingly.
So like when you go through that process, like could he do that? Yes, he could do that. And like one of the things that do I believe it? No. And one of the things that I routinely hear, and I think we have to get at this conversation and hit this conversation right on. Oh, well, if you look at Jay Wright's first 3 years, and we need to stop, guys. That is a loser fucking argument, and I'll explain why. And I had to type out my reasons for this. Like, first
the rules have changed. It's not even a valid argument.
Well, yes, I mean, even forgetting that, Jay was an experienced coach who took Hofstra to 2 NCAA tournaments and was a highly sought after coach, versus Kyle, who was 500 at Fordham 1 year,
which is an accomplishment for he brought in like 6 guys before crazy like getting Fordham from like a 3-win team to 500 was impressive. Yes. But
Jay was at Hofstra for 7 years.
7 years, right? So we hired an experienced coach, right? Like Seton Hall's not having this conversation right now because St. Peter's made in the fucking Elite Eight. So Seton Hall's, forget the expectations of the program argument.
Yeah.
Seton Hall hired an experienced coach to cut his teeth for a long period of time. Now, granted, I do get why Father Peter and Mark Jackson made the hire they did, because like every big program always does a handoff. Who had a major coach always does a handoff. Duke did it. UNC did it. Everyone does it, right? Like UConn did it. Like, and again, you could debate the merits of that, but at least Villanova followed a path that is somewhat defensible based on what other major programs have done. Fine. But like now when you peel back the onion and we're 2 years later and you look at this, then you have to stop with the arguments that Jay made the NIT his first 3 years. First, that was one. I hate to count this against Kyle, but several of Jay's assistants have gotten jobs elsewhere, and it hasn't worked out for them anywhere. It doesn't speak to the overall resume that like, oh, these guys know the formula. They just need time to implement it, right? Like that's part of it. The program was in a totally different spot then, and I don't mean in terms of like success, though I do mean to some degree. I mean in terms of like, who cares about the program, right? You have a situation where apathy was pretty pervasive back then. Like the Villanova fan base wasn't as nearly as engaged. Like there were diehards, there always diehards to any program, but this fan base has grown dramatically. And by the way, the program has reaped the benefits of that significantly with
not just the
increased ticket
program,
prices.
the school itself has
school-
reaped the benefits.
Correct. Right. Exactly right. So like, you can't just turn around and say, oh, well, this is, this is what we've always done. So like, we got to keep doing that. Right. Like, you're in a different place. You benefited from it. So now you got to now you got to eat shit for it too, to some degree. Right. Like that's personal responsibility. It's professional responsibility. That's a fiduciary responsibility. So like, so there's that. Right at that point in time, it was not, sorry, what was I going to say? Jay won several games early on in his tenure. Like you could point to UNC win that we had earlier this year, but like Jay won several games early on in his tenure. What was I going to say? I think there was a UCLA win. There was a Michigan State win. Like he won games against big competition early in his career that made it clear that like, hey, this guy might have the formula here. It's just going to take him some time. And that goes without saying about the transfer portal. Secondly, he brought in a master stroke recruiting class. Alan Ray, Randy Foy, Jason Frazier, etc. There was a reason to believe, based on the recruiting capabilities that had been that were dramatic at that point in time. Moreover, because there was no portal back then, so this is where this comes into play. Because there was no portal back then, he had young groups, right? Like his first season, he was a little bit older because a lot of Lapis guys stayed, but like he was young early on. He had a very young core group. So there was a reason to say these guys are all young. We have had two of the most experienced rosters in Division I in back-to-back years.
Yep.
Right. And arguably, I think we were the oldest roster in the country, or one of the oldest rosters in the country this year. And this is a point that I think we need to really hit on. Jay was out and about drumming up support on Nova's campus. And you heard stories of him jumping on tables. Dana O'Neill likes to write about that in his book. Like he needed to drum up support because there was apathy around the program, etc. Jay built relationships with fans. He built relationships with a bunch of different people. And so even when there was losing and quote unquote, and by the way, like after 3 years, Dana O'Neill sat across from him at the Villanova Diner, and she tells his story all the time. He sat across from him at the Villanova Diner and said, "You're on the hot seat." And he said, "I know." Okay, so that's 3 years in for him, right? So 2 years in for Kyle. Why doesn't he get the same questions, right? Like it's not that much.
He does.
Right, like he's getting the same questions from us.
Yeah.
But like now Dana O'Neill's writing, and I hate to say this because like she's been on this podcast and I think she does a great job overall. But like now she's just writing articles that say Villanova would never fire him. Like, okay, why don't you ask as a journalist the question of like, well, why not? Right? Like, where is the why not question? Is that like, I expect that from a media member, right? So like, but the point was that Jay was out there, right? So like people felt like they knew him, and obviously Jay got it, like in a way that like very few people get it when it comes to Villanova.
Yeah.
But there are but like that's kind of the point, is that Jay got it in a way very few people get Villanova. Like Kyle's job is basketball. There's a GM to manage this. There's an NIL collective to manage money, right? Like Jay's still on campus, kissing the ring of the donors, the major donors, etc. Father Peter's as good a president as Father Dobbin was. Father Peter's been he's a celebrity in terms of presidency.
Fantastic president. Yeah.
Right. Like objectively by any measurable factor that you could possibly say. So everything around him is grown and takes care of itself. And all he has to do is coach basketball. And when you make 2 straight NITs, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. Like, it can't be good enough, right? And to the point is the recruiting class. Do I happen to like this recruiting class? Yeah, I happen to think that there's actually like this is like a classic Jay in the middle of a good run recruiting class, where it's not like we're booting something where you got like stars everywhere, but you got like this 3-man recruiting class. There's dogs in the class. Like there's guys who will fight for playing time, who will be good culture guys in practice. I think this is a culture fit class, but unfortunately,
kind of like Daryl, Chris, and Josh's class before they got here. Honestly, like
yes,
the vibe that you had about them before they got here, because obviously that turned into a historically great class. But leading into it, you're like, yeah, these are nice pieces, and I like each player individually for what they can bring.
Correct, right. But the number one need on this team are the two biggest needs on this team are a real legitimate big man and a real legitimate point guard. And this recruiting class has none of it. And we didn't get in the portal, and we didn't get that anywhere. So you talk about recruiting, and I point out that like the recruiting class is nice, but there's nothing like a recruiting class that like, oh, we need to keep these guys because these guys are like the future of the program. Like you would have said about Jay when the A-Ray, Randy Foyer, like give them time, they'll get there. You don't get that now. So like, yeah, you can go to the portal and get more guys and spend more money. But the message that we've sent this year is that we can spend a ton of money and flush it all fucking down the drain. And if the NIL guys want to light all the money on fire, I support it. Go for it. Go do that. But like you can't be happy with how this turned out. You got seniors, you got guys who fit the like Bamba like objectively fits the culture of Villanova, right? Right. So like you've gotten guys, and you got a pretty much the exact same result this year. You were the 6th seed in the Big East tournament, and you got bounced by the 3 seed in the Thursday night, and therefore you missed the tournament, which is exactly the same situation that we were in a year ago.
It's the same thing that was done last year. Last year we had the excuse of injuries. It's the 14th most experienced team in the country. On paper, yeah.
Right.
So
top what? What was that? Top 10%? Top 5%?
5% of teams in the country. So you get an experienced team. We pull in these transfers, and at a certain point, like you can say, like I think people will go back, and will say, like, well, these transfers don't understand Villanova. They don't understand, like, it's like it takes time to buy into Villanova. It takes time to understand how to play. That's the thing I've always heard. And the thing is, there's twofold. One, sure, let's say sure with that. But these are transfers that are coming in, and like in the case of Hakeem Hart and Tyler Burton, they're here for 1 year. So you need to be able to understand how to get them to play Villanova basketball in whatever way that is, or like adjust Villanova basketball ever so slightly to allow them to do what they're good at. And I think this is the thing that pisses me off about this entire team, this entire season. I don't know that we put our players in a position to do what they were good at most of the time. There were moments, but it wasn't consistent. Kyle could recognize a moment, but he could not step up across the board to put the players in their best situation. And like the players obviously have a large ownership of this as well, and not being able to step up to the moment. But like Kyle does not know or did not know the buttons to press on this team, when to put the right people in, did not understand not roster management, but substitution management. I'm not even blaming him. Like on paper, we made the right decision on this team. And it was just, okay, we have veteran leadership. We haven't even spoke about Eric and Justin, where we have two people who are like, will go down as Villanova legends. However we feel about Justin's like last like half of his last 3 months. He's played hurt. He will go down as Villanova legend. Eric has deserved so much better. Eric is going to go down as one of the best bigs in Villanova history. And we had that. We had highly touted transfers, and then we had young guns in Armstrong and Hausen. And we could not press the right buttons at the right time to get this team where it needs to be. And the thing I've said all season, and I think that's been the most frustrating, is it's not like, okay, we weren't in games, and it's not like, oh, clearly like we never lived up to our potential. We saw the potential in the Bahamas. We saw what it looked like. And I think that's what pisses me off the most, is we knew what this team could do, and we could not get out of our own way multiple times in multiple games down the stretch throughout the whole season.
And unfortunately now it becomes like, there's some moments that become memes, right? Like, and his timeouts are a meme, right? Like it's literally like, we're in the midst of like a 10-minute scoring drought, and he's like, guys, you got to get back. And it's like, oh my God, like draw up a play for Christ's sake. Like you got to get these guys a bucket. They need a bucket. They don't need to get back. They need a bucket. Right. Like, and this is why I give Kim English more credit. We beat them twice, right? Like he beat Kim English twice, right? Head to head. And that win at Providence, right? Like we were blown away by it. But like Kim English, after we lost to them, after we beat them, the breaks off of them in Philly, he said, these guys can't handle just the free flowing offense. I got to instill some place. And guess what? He got wins down the stretch, right? Like he got wins down the stretch. He had, player of the year in the conference, but like he got wins down the stretch. He got that team playing great basketball despite the injuries, which they didn't make an excuse of like we did last year, right? Like he got them to a place where they needed to be, right? And they got left out of the field, and we could, but there was a legitimate argument to debate the merits on if they should have been left out of the field or not.
But like also just to get to that point on Kim English, they lost Bryce Hopkins. Like I think people keep forgetting about that. They lost Bryce Hopkins, who was preseason all first team Big East. Like it was an amazing player. They lost him midseason. And I think the one thing I want to point out is Kim also put Devin Carter was Big East player of the year, and Devin Carter's an amazing individual talent. Devin Carter was put in winning situations by Kim English. He made the game easier for Devin Carter, and Devin Carter then stepped up to the level that he became. But like Devin Carter got better as the season went on. I think if we have to it wasn't like he came from the rip and was immediately Big East player of the year nomination or contender. It kind of slow burned. Like it wasn't really much in the beginning of the season, and obviously like Hopkins when Hopkins is there, it was like he's sharing the load, so that's one thing. But then Kim adjusted, and that's not a thing that we really did with consistency across the whole season. I think Kyle maybe had like the UNC game he did. There's a couple adjustments that he made in like the second Butler game that I liked, but like there's just things that
and
there's more moments than a consistent theme. You can point to a handful of games.
Yeah. And then, okay. So then you get to the Providence game, we win at Providence. And at that point in time, I was like, we're going to make the tournament. Like, I was like, I felt good. Like, did I think we're going to win both games that rest of that week? No, but I thought we'd get one. And this is, to me, this sealed the deal, right? Like, and I said, if we don't make the tournament, then I'm going to call for his head. And I said that months ago, but I thought we were going to get there. And I really wanted us to, because I do think that a good situation would have been if Kyle worked out, right? If Kyle works out, that's a good situation. So like, if he's not going to get fired. So like, I'll root for him because I'm a fan of the program. Like him doing well means that we get to be happy. Right. So like at the end of the day, I'm going to root for him, but like but by his own measure, him in every press conference again, and I want to talk about the press conference thing because it's another freaking disgrace. But like he's like it's just coach speak, except Jay gets to fucking do the platitudes because his team wins all the time. Kyle Neptune doesn't get to do platitudes. Kyle Neptune has to talk, right? And he doesn't, and that's cagey. And like he might be introverted, whatever. And again, I'm not trying to be this not personal, but like part of his job is the press. Part of his job is managing that. And he doesn't, candidly, we don't have an injury report on Jordan Longino. Like there's rumors. We all heard, like everyone's heard through the grapevine that he's got a torn meniscus. No one's heard that information yet, right? Like that's just an example. But by his measure, by his justification, we need to be playing our best basketball by the end of the season. Well, let me ask you this. Does a 10-point loss at Seton Hall, does starting 32-8 versus Creighton, does a 1-point win versus fucking DePaul, and does an overtime heartbreaking loss to Marquette, do any of those sound like the best basketball at the end of the season to you? Because if it does, tell me, because you have to show your work there.
Yep.
If the season ended at the Providence game, I would have said, we probably are playing our best basketball right now. That was really damn good hoop that we played in Providence. And I actually felt like he coached that game well, right? Like, but
I don't even blame him for Seton Hall. Like you can still be playing your best basketball and lose. Like that's a thing.
A game.
Yeah, you can lose a game. But like you cannot, like, I think for me, the breaking point is like you cannot show up in a winner take all game, not a winner take all game, but like a game that we needed versus Creighton, and we get down 32-8. Like
that's when my opinion completely like as we've all said, like I'm fairly certain he will not be fired, but that's when I was like, oh, I don't know if he survives this loss.
You're sitting there and he's getting booed. And so this goes to another part of it is, and I think Villanova is reading the room incorrectly. And having spent some time at a happy hour at the Big East before the Marquette game at Stout, I feel pretty confident saying this. I think Villanova's got the room read so poorly on this. I think they think that there's just a bunch of cranks on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook comments and View Sports and View Hoop Sports. And they just think that it's a bunch of cranks who want him fired, who don't know anything about hoops and whatever, and don't care. And they just are just mad that we're not making Final Fours anymore. And I think that they think that that's where they whatever, and the rest of the fan base is fine. And they're reading it so wrong. They're reading it so beyond wrong. I'm telling you that, like, I will meet people at work who don't know I'm a Villanova guy, who then learn I'm a Villanova guy in conversation, who then they reveal they're a Villanova person. And then they'll be like, they got to fucking fire this guy. This is unbelievable what they've let happen to the school and this program. And like out of nowhere, right? Like the conversation wasn't going that way. We weren't talking about basketball. The amount of times that I've had conversations, I was at a bar the other day. I was sitting next to a guy with a Villanova shirt on. I just happened to like lean over and say, "Go Cats," because it was like before the Creighton game. And the guy was just like, they got to fire this head coach. It's unbelievable. Like it's everybody, right? Like, and everybody is maybe an exaggeration, but the amount of fans who feel this way, to which my point is like, what are they going to do at Hoops Mania next year? What are they going to do at the home opener when he rocks out and gets introduced and gets booed again? You're going to just blame all the fans for sucking? Like,
I feel like there's two camps. There are people who think he should be fired, and there are people who think he shouldn't be, but not because of anything that he's done, but because Villanova hasn't done anything yet, or doesn't do it that way. Like, that's about it. Like, I think those are your two camps, and there's the people that think he should be fired, and the other camp of the people who like just operate in that format. Like, they are just people who will become people who think he should become fired. Chris, to your point, like it is pervasive. It is casual Villanova fans. It's diehard Villanova fans. We're not in a good spot right now. And the chance to make amends, the chance to do something to change that is right now. That is probably in the way of finding a new head coach, but it won't be. So then we're sitting here and we're banking on Kyle figuring it out. That's just kind of where we're at. That's what we're banking on right now. Otherwise, we are going to be looking at, and I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to suck. We might just be mediocre, but like that can't be the standards of the program. Like we might not be DePaul or what Georgetown is, but like going 17-15, and I don't know if we just got our NIT bid. I don't know if that happened yet, but like, and just getting NIT bids, like if that is the direction the program is okay with going with, once again, I would love the communication about that. There's a lack of communication about so much stuff within this program. And I feel pretty passionate that we need to kind of have this communication with the fan base with a very passionate, and like, I really hate the like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Like at the end of the day, yeah, maybe they can't, like a person watching the basketball game can't see like a flare screen and doesn't understand what's going on the court. But like, these are passionate fans who've been watching Villanova basketball for 40 years, for 50 years, heck, for 20 years. And we know when something does not look like Villanova basketball, when something's not happening, something that's happening on the court isn't like going the way that it should be. And to continuously downplay the fan base and treat them as if they're stupid, but then also want us to throw blind support is very frustrating. And I've been on record about this about Kyle. Like, Kyle, for the love of God, just be a human being and tell us like what you're feeling. Like, and I'm not asking you to like be like give this huge vulnerable moment, but like just like it honestly just saying, hey, this is hard and this sucks and I'm trying to figure it out, and like, but and say like, and this is the steps I'm hoping to do, and like anything, like you can placate with that, and that's better than the robotic stuff we've gotten over the last 2 years. Like, and it's just like it's a mismanagement of, like you said, from a PR standpoint, but just of like you are running a Fortune 500 company and you're you're misleading shareholders.
You're correct.
Yeah,
correct. Someone commented like, and I see this in the thing, like, well, what about what level of blame lies with the players? And I think there was fair criticisms of certain players throughout the season, and we've said that before, right? Like to a certain degree, like and I'm fine with that. The problem is the pervasiveness of the player issues. Like I've made this comment before, and sometimes it's a little bit funky to say, but like I've made this comment before. If one player shoots poorly for a year, it's on the player. If every player shoots poorly for the year, it's on the coach, right? Like that's not like shooting is like one of the more chance things to have to do it. Like these guys can probably make a ton of shots in practice, but like point being is that the fish stinks from the head. So like if every player is playing below the expectation that you had coming into the season, then it's on the coach. The buck stops with the coach, right? And so that is the issue that we had. Because even if if anyone except Eric Dixon played up to the level that you'd expect him to do, we're probably talking on this podcast about what's Gonzaga look like, right? Like, or like whatever the team that we're going to be playing in the field is looking like, right? Like if it was multiple players played up to the expectations that were had for them at the beginning of the year and certain players didn't, then we could look at those players and say, hey, you didn't do what you had to do, right? Like, but in this situation, you had like multiple players regress. And when you have multiple players regress or don't jump, it's the coach, it's the staff, right? Like it's that. And honestly, like I think there needs to be like they need to answer for that. Like this program failed this year. This was a failure, right? Like and I would just wish that they would say it. Right? And like to the point about humanity, like I think if Kyle got up on a press conference, whether it's like or in his media availability, and said, "This season we failed this season as a coaching roster and whatever, and we're going to work on ourselves this offseason, and we're going to be better next season, and we're going to go get guys who can help us play Villanova basketball. We can still use platitudes, who can help us play Villanova basketball. Get a point guard who can run the show. Get a big man who can help us get some rebounds and not give up multiple offensive rebounds per possession." Like, that's not what actually happened, but you get my point. Like you would. I think you would go a long way to at least giving the fan base a little bit of something to say, hey man, we're rooting for you. So like, I hope you get it right. But right now people are like annoyed because that, to your point of the humanity piece, right? Like it just feels like a robotic Jay Wright replacement. And it's not, and instead of it being like Kyle Neptune, human coach of Villanova basketball who we're pulling for. And if it doesn't work out, then, okay, so be it. But like, it doesn't feel like that way. And this is where Villanova's got it so bad and wrong, and they need to get him out there because if they're going to keep this guy hired, they need to get him out there and to do some damage control, meet people, like have a Q&A, let him talk a little bit, let him make mistakes in a conversation, right? Like build some equity with the fan base because he has none. And that's kind of where I feel like, look, if you're going to continue to keep this guy, then as a Villanova institution, you have to support him in a way and push him to do certain things that he's not doing right now. And that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. I don't even think he needs to go as far as like outlining like player roster management. Like I don't even want to see that like necessarily. I sit here and I'm like, how come the conversation just isn't okay? We're when we say we're missing shots, like how can we fix that? And it goes to defense and rebounding. It's like you're quite literally just not answering the question. What are you going to do to get better shots for the players? Like, yeah, there is a level of make or miss. Like players are the ones taking the shot and they're missing them. But we also have seen the offense stagnate so many times. They're like a 5 minute. The way I'll put it is like this: having a 5 minute scoring drought once, maybe twice in a year. That's players. People will miss shot like here or there, miss shots here or there. Having that happen probably in 40% of our games.
More than that.
Yeah, more than that.
I mean, 5 minutes might be a lot. But
5 minutes is a lot.
2 to 3 minute stretches every game. I would wager.
Yeah, having that happen almost every game is insane, and that comes down to like a structural, like what are we doing on offense? What are our responsibilities, and how are we creating shots for people? We're gonna get back to like we haven't discussed this about the game, and like I don't blame the play call I don't blame the idea of what happened right here, but at the end of the Marquette game, we had a chance to win the game. Armstrong thought we were going to call a timeout. Kyle said no, and I honestly didn't mind that. I was like, you know what, let them play.
Tie game, let them play. Don't let Shaka Smart set his defense. Yeah. I get it. Halfway
through that, when Bamba was sitting there like a deer in headlights, and it's like, all right, we need to do something. That's when you call a timeout. I'm sorry. And we didn't. And I was like, that's just you putting the team in, you're putting your players in a bad position. Despite them missing shots or doing whatever, you're putting them in a bad position. Yeah, I don't know. We are extremely frustrated, and I think it's what I think what's pissing me off the most is where people are pretending our frustration isn't real, and people meaning like admin, Villanova basketball, the powers that be, are pretending that it's not real, and like Chris said, being just a bunch of cranks. And it's not that. Like there's structural, there is pervasive, there is systemic things that need to change. And like it can change. Like, and this is the thing that like I think also frustrates or kind of I think is interesting in this NIL transfer portal market, this world. Things can turn around in a year. Like Kyle has the ability to turn this around in a year. Like we get the right transfers, you press all of a sudden he's pressing the right buttons. You can get back on track very quickly. What just happened?
I'm just laughing because, like, yeah, but I mean, like, we'll be in the same position that we are here today.
We will be.
I mean, like, let's be real.
Sorry,
I didn't mean to just like kill that, but
no,
that's what we thought happened last year.
Yeah, but that's in theory that can happen, and it's not happening. So then people are like, well, and this is a whole separate conversation of if you fire Kyle, who are you going to get afterwards? And it's like this idea that no other coach, no other person can walk into Villanova and figure out what it means to be a Villanova. Like that's just like there was a point for most people who are like who didn't go to Villanova or who go to Villanova, I should say, who they didn't go to Villanova, they didn't really fully understand it. They got there, they understood it. You can hire a coach that has Villanova values are not like exclusive to Villanova. Like that's just being like that's not exclusive to Villanova. You can find a coach that has those values. You can find a coach that has those values and then pull them into Villanova and this is how Villanova operates and let them work within that, but then also push it to grow. Like once again, we can't be doing the same thing over and over. It's a program that deserves to grow. And sometimes you need to be pushed. And Jay pushed the program in different ways when he was there, like you mentioned. And I guess my question is like, is Kyle even like is Kyle pushing the program? I just feel like there's a lot that we need to change. I'll just leave it like that.
By the way, I'm trying to get NIT news while I'm
that's also what I'm like vamping, and I'm like, I just want to know what the NIT news is at this stage.
Yeah. Seton Hall's a 1 seed. I think they're playing St. Joe's. I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
Seton Hall, St. Joe's, PC, Providence College, Boston College are playing, which is a nice throwback game.
I'm assuming we've accepted, but like it'd be very interesting if we declined it and it never came out.
Do we? How does it even like? I know they.
Are we going to make it?
Are we going to make that? That's what I was just going to ask because it doesn't. So the first thing I thought when
it'd be insane to not make
when Seton Hall and Providence and St. John's all missed the tournament was, oh, we might have just lost our NIT bid because I know they restructured the way that I
thought our net was going to guarantee that we got it.
I don't know how it works anymore.
I
remember something like, oh, the top 2 teams from each conference that don't get it. And I'm like, well, we're already out of that conversation.
Yeah.
But I can't remember.
And I'm checking Twitter. If someone, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Look, there's a lot to say on this, and we're going to host and this is important. We're going to host a Twitter Spaces immediately after we end this podcast. Because look, we had more comments on this podcast than I think any other podcast that we've had. But there, first of all, there's one other final thing that I want to address here, and it's like an elephant in the room type question in terms of like, well, okay, we move on. Where do you go from here? And I can tell you, the first place I'm not going is to Jay Wright's coaching tree. And we can, and because at the end of the day, here's how I see it. UConn went into Calhoun's coaching tree with Kevin Ollie, right? And by the way, he got a national championship, and because that national championship he earned several more years than he probably deserved. But they did that.
Even make it like the Patrick Ewing argument, like, oh, he wins the Big East tournament, he bought himself extra time, and the program fell into disarray. Same thing with UConn. He wins that title, buys himself some time, and it ended in a lawsuit.
right. And a $12 million payout to Kevin Ollie, right? But guess what they did? They hired a guy who they felt was a fit to their culture and program as a university and as a fan base and whatever. And they felt like they fit it. And guess what? It Hurley fits them like a glove, right? And guess who shows up all the time for UConn? Jim Calhoun, he's right back there because people want to be around good stuff happening, right? Like Jay Wright managed to bring Massimino and Lapis back to the table, managed to get all those guys from both those programs who did not like each other. And we have that. I have people who I've talked to on record about that or off record about that who did not like each other. And Jay Wright got them all to come back together and all be part of the Villanova basketball family. Guess what happens when you put a winner in there who can fit some other parts of your program and what you are as a university? They managed to bring it together. So
Looks
where
like
do you go?
Sorry, looks like we're a 1 seed in the
We
NBA.
are a 1 seed officially. Okay, good.
We got postseason basketball at the Pavilion,
Postseason
baby.
basketball at the Pavilion. What do we get? 2 or 3 or whatever?
VCU.
Butler's in 2. So St. John's turned it down. So I think there's 4 Big East teams making it.
Oh
I don't
my
think
God.
Xavier qualifies, do they? Xavier did get it. Xavier got in. There's 5 Big East teams out of 32. Or sorry, is it? No, it's 6. No, it would have been 6 if St. John's.
St. John said, yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, yeah. So sorry, I'm back to that coaching tree dialogue. There's plenty of other coaches that you can go there. My personal favorite, even though it's funny, I feel like I jinxed him. My personal favorite is Mitch Henderson at Princeton. And some people might be like, "Oh, we could go swing for a big wig." Villanova doesn't want to do that. You know what they liked about Jay Wright? It was his last stop. And no one talks about that a lot. Jay Wright turned down Kentucky, UCLA, like Kentucky twice, UCLA at least once, right? Like several other coaching positions. They want someone who they feel like is going to be a final stop for the program. That's important to Villanova. Moreover, Mitch Henderson can coach the shit out of basketball. His teams win all the fucking time, right? Like Princeton's been awesome year over year after year. He's made a Sweet 16, right? So they've been able to do that. That's why I'm just bringing up Mitch Henderson as an example. He doesn't have to move very far. He works at an academic first focused institution. You supply him with NIL dollars who can coach a team to win basketball games. That's an easy way to go. But there's a list a mile long. I have 15 names on a list, right? Like if Villanova wanted to go elsewhere, they can find a culture fit that fits the Villanova tradition things that can get us to play for full 40 minutes of Villanova basketball and say all the right shit. Again, that makes us all feel nice and happy and get the players to do well academically and then also win a lot of basketball games, which guess what is the most important thing, right? I'm just bringing up a name of someone who I've done a lot of research on. I've talked to some people who follow coaching decisions a lot that think he's like a sleeping giant, like Matt Langle's another guy, Colgate. Fuck, even Speedy Claxton at Hofstra. He hasn't won a tournament game, so I'd wait years for him. But like even Speedy Claxton, like Rick Pitino sings his praises all the time, right? Like there's guys who fit the coaching mold for Villanova who kind of can get what we want to do and can do it well. So in my example, the only reason why I bring up examples is because we're not like beholden to this tree or whatever. And that's the only way that we can keep our culture. Jay Wright will still be coming around. We'll still have the old players come around. They'll come back. All you got to do is put together a winning program and a program that honors the past like Jay did, and they'll get everyone back.
That can be quite literally just in the job description of like, hey, when you're at Villanova, this is part of the responsibilities of being a head coach. Integrate yourself, pull the old players, all that different stuff. And like just another thing to call out of Mitch Henderson, like Mitch Henderson's also coached he's coached NBA talent. He had Tosin Awoma last year, who's in the NBA, has bounced around a couple times, so has played NBA games. And then on this current Princeton team, there's Xavier Lee, who's a guard who might go to the NBA. It might be a next year thing. He might transfer, whatever the deal is. But at the end of the day, he's had NBA talent on this Princeton team. So we've seen tournament success, built continued success, dealt with high-end talent, is able to recognize high-end talent. Like someone like him is available, and he is in general, like obviously, like we don't know him, but in general, a culture fit just from the outside looking in. So there's plenty of places that we can go. We just have to have do we have the gall to do it? I don't even know if it's gall is the right word, but do we have the stones to do it? Do we have the decision making to do that? I don't know.
We're playing VCU.
I was going to say, yeah, Villanova VCU.
All right.
I don't really got much more to say about that.
Well, my thing is, if Villanova is going to keep this coach around, then go win some games, right? Like you're participating in this NIT, go win some games so that the fan base and whatever can leave with a good taste in their mouth, and don't lose by people sitting on the bench playing Liberty and embarrass yourselves on national television again. Like, go win some games.
Yeah, but just win some games. I agree.
Yeah.
Like, if we're gonna do it, you might as well, like, hey, play your best. You want to play your best basketball at the end of the season. This is still like a legitimate tournament. Like, there's chances.
Some are saying it's more prestigious because you're invited. You're not selected by a biased committee.
Exactly. And like, there's no week 16 seeds in this one. There's only like, one seed. We're a 1 seed, people. So actually, I think we're a 1 seed. That's all I'm gonna say. And we have a home court game. UConn can't say that, can they? They got to travel. They got to get on a bus.
Actually, UConn doesn't have to get on a plane until presumably the Final Four, which
neither do we.
Oh, I know.
We're at home, and then I think the second round will also be at home. So like, hey,
yeah. Well, then it's in Vegas.
Yeah.
Oh, is that where it is this year?
Yeah, it ends in Vegas. So it's funny. They could theoretically have a Final Four of all Big East teams and have to play that stupid fucking tournament in Vegas. Oh God.
That'd be funny.
Yeah. All righty. Have we had enough?
I think so. Well,
no, I haven't, because I'm going to go on Spaces.
I know you're going to.
So if you're listening to this podcast right now, as we wrap this up, we will be firing up a Big East a Twitter space. Happy to hear everybody's thoughts and discussions, and we're going to open up the phone lines right away. So tap in, and we'll be happy to chat.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm wearing this Snuggie, and it's really sweaty, so I want to get out of it.
So you'll be on in a second.
Yeah, I'll be on in a second. So we'll talk to you all a little bit later. In terms of the next podcast, I don't fucking know, guys. We'll figure it out. It's probably next week.
What happens.
Yeah, we'll see. It's probably going to be next week, because I guess we have a game this week. I don't know I don't know when they do the games for this. I can't remember. There'll be a game. There'll be a podcast. You guys will listen. We know how this goes. Thanks y'all for listening. And as always, let's go Nova.